this talk, that this talk is basically to understand and to discuss different issues among each other, and we try to educate our juniors, basically our even friends, from different point of view. So nothing said or viewed in this particular talk should be recorded in any platform. So this is purely for learning purpose. So having said that, let me also introduce you to the topic. So this topic is Indian economy at crossroads. So for me, when we speak about Indian economy, there are four aspects that I want our juniors or our basically participants who are preparing for civil service or preparing for other examination to understand and to know. So for me, to understand the Indian economy, we need to understand the macroeconomic perspectives. So in macroeconomics, if most of you have read who are preparing for the service, so these are four pillars, if you can say. These are economic growth, inflation, unemployment, and stability. So to understand these four aspects, or to prepare yourself for these aspects, also you need to understand another concept, that is how we can impact all these four pillars through different policies, that is fiscal policy as well as monetary policy. So these are two policies that could impact these macroeconomic pillars or indicators by which you could understand the whole phenomena. It's not about India, it's about even the whole world. So in micro, if you come to the micro, you understand there is production, consumption, distribution, and exchange kind of thing. So for me, all the economics, you understand all these basic components of economics, you can understand whether what is the trend. So to understand the market, to understand the other aspects of the economy, we need to understand all these four type concepts. So recently, we all have heard, if we say that Indian economy at crossroads, then we say that GDP has been declined at 23.9%. And we have a corona kind of pandemic situation, and also so corona pandemic has impacted GDP growth, we can say, including, we can bring all other aspects, that economic aspects to corona. So recently also, let me also say you that we have all you have all know that farmer bills have come, as well as labor codes have been passed. All these are also aspects of the Indian economy that we can understand where we are actually. So to understand some of these topics, I don't know, I think Priyadarshi must have something in his mind to speak about different components of Indian economy. So Priyadarshi, we are happy to have you, and it's our pleasure. I welcome you from all of our participants in Aama Prayas group to speak on this topic, and you have 45 to 1 hour to speak on this topic. And after that, we will open this session for open discussion, that we could take questions either through chat box, either through direct discussion. And we after your presentation, we have Pavitra Rathi Panda from NISM to discuss what you said. So he will be the discussant, and he is a prominent person in terms of financial aspects to the economy. So he could add what you say actually. So not taking much time, I welcome you from all of us to listen to you, and if anything also any participant want to ask something in between, they are also welcome. But it would be preferred if you keep your question at the end, and we should discuss during the discussion time. So it's over to you, Joshi, and the stage is yours, and the forum is for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vikas bhai. Uh, I am very pleased to be here as a kind of to give a lecture on this platform on of Aama Prayas webinar series. And Dr. Deepak Das was my actually childhood friend, and when he persuaded me to give some lecture on this very platform, then I could not actually deny him to do that. And then he keep me pressurizing, when are you giving, when are you giving? And then at last I agreed to give it. Yesterday only I agreed to give it. And in a very small piece of time, I have uh, developed a kind of simple lecture, which and I asked Deepak the about the means the listener's profile, where from which background they will be. And he said generally not generally from social science background and other backgrounds, not specifically economics. So I will try to make this presentation uh, bit for a layman. From the title itself, you can know that I am going to deliver this lecture, or I try to read Indian economy for a layman. What actually whatever is that is happening in the Indian economy, will that be hampering how we as a common man are being hampered by those policies? Are these if there is a global slowdown, if there is a coronavirus pandemic that is prevailing, whether all these scenarios are affecting us? Because we as an individual, what we are doing is actually at the end of the month we are getting the salary and we are happy with that, right? But it is not the common picture or generalized picture everywhere inside the economy, right? So, and when we talk about the growth phenomena of the Indian economy, then we can see that the trend of growth, or the growth has been affected not only due to corona, but prior to corona also the growth has been slowing down, right? So I will try to explain, or kind of give some identification to those aspects which actually has happened during that time. So that is the idea. So uh, uh, when we were in the intermediate classes at the BJB college, Deepak and me were a roommate. Even Sankar, one of the member in this group, were roommate. And during that period of time, only Deepak was talking about a kind of service kind of thing, uh, service kind of thing to among his villagers and all. And at that point of time, he has started imagining the idea of Prayas as a service group to the humanity. And during that period of time, when we were around 13 or 14 years old, all right. So then it is very it gives me very pleasure that the Prayas group has now become a very big group, and the services of the Prayas group are actually reaching the local peoples in the ground also at the time of the cyclones and all. And also the Prayas group has a vast population I mean to say vast population of intellectuals in this group. So they are actually giving the knowledge and circulating the knowledge among the society as well. So coming to this lecture, uh, uh, I would like to, through this lecture, I would like to demystify economics for a lay educated man. Okay, and in the present era, when we are looking at a TV discussion or some economic discussion, then we can find that it is narrowed down to experts. Mostly they are coming from USA, Western developed countries. Like, so when we are discussing about, let's say, Indian macroeconomy, in most of the debate we will find Raghuram Rajan, we will find Aravind Subramaniam, and all, right? And they are actually educated in the US university and Western university. To the contrary, India has a long tradition of making economics a subject for a layman, okay, or transforming economics as a subject for a layman until fairly recently up to the reforms that has taken place in the 1990s, right? And after 1990s, what has happened after the liberalization policy has of all interest parity theory, all these jargons have taken over. Then the financial market jargons have taken over, and the discussion of economics has become much more expertized. So experts will only discuss on economics. Prior to these reforms, what actually was happening is that every economic bill per se that were being tabled in the parliament, may it be the Rajya Sabha or the Lok Sabha, were discussed voraciously by the parliamentarians, even if those parliamentarians have any sort of background in economics or not. That doesn't matter. You are coming from economics or not, that doesn't matter, but every financial bills will be actually discussed very voraciously. You may name a few among those. You may have Ram Manohar Lohia. You may have Purushottam Ganesh Mavlankar. You have Jai Prakash Narayan. You have parliamentarians like Minu Masani. All these parliamentarians, they lived up to the they died in the fairly recently, like in 2002. Minu Masani and Mavlankar have died, right? So, and we have lost another parliamentarian who actually has voraciously debated in the parliament platform about economics things. That is Dr. Jaswant Singh, right? So all these parliamentarians, no matter whether they come from economic background or not, they have an idea what economics is, how economics can actually impact their lifestyle, how economics can impact the general common people in India. So, so that complexion of the parliamentarians have now actually changed. All right. So then, with the liberalization policy that has started in the 1990s, what has happened is the Indian economy was more or less taken care of by the market economy, and the size of the state has actually shrinked after that. All right. But when economics as a pure discipline was started long back in the 16th century, when we look at into the writings of Sir William Petty, and then we have famous political thinker like Machiavelli and all, then in those concepts, in their writings, what we find is that the state or the government actually is an integral part of economics. Okay, so you cannot actually separate out economics and the state. Okay, so the phenomena of a nation state where at that point of time has emerged, and this has prevailed during the physiocratics era as well as in the Smithian period. Okay, in the writings of Smith. That's why the name of the book is the from the name of the book itself, the wealth of nations, the wealth of the individual nations. That was the idea. So, uh, the inherent idea was that one cannot separate out the state from an economy. And later, when the capitalism developed, it becomes the idea of laissez-faire that prevailed almost for two to three uh, two centuries almost after no, not 2 centuries, almost 1 century with the arrival of the neoclassical Austrian schools, right? So what had actually happened with the laissez-faire idea that had prevailed in the economy is that the role of the state in the economy has actually shrinked, and the market has taken off that place. So everything has to be gone through the market. Then uh, what actually has happened is that uh, the market, when there is in the 1930s, when the Great Depression arrives after the World War One, then at that point of time the market fails to correct the economic scenario at that point, and then the government interventions when were prescribed by a man called John Maynard Keynes, right? We all know all these facts, right? So the idea is that original idea when we start economics is that government has a role to play in the economic affairs. Okay, we cannot actually cut down the government from any economic activity. That is the idea that was prevailing, which actually was neglected later. Then, coming to the present scenario, we come to know that the Indian economy is actually going through a kind of downturn, you may say, from the last few years. So let's say let it be from the start of the 2018. Okay, so what has actually happened? After the 1991, after the reform process started, what actually happened is the first decade after 1991, you may say after 1995, there was a crisis, financial crisis, and then after that the Kargil war in 1998-99, and then the government collapsed, and again the NDA government came to power. After that, from 2001 to 2010, during this 10-year periods, during the first decade of the 21st century, what has happened is that the India has achieved very high growth rate. Okay, 8%, 9%, even 10% sometimes, right? So that was the growth performance of India, and that was actually very high in comparison to the international standard. And we were actually at the second place, just behind the Chinese growth rates, right? So that was the thing. And after 2010 up to 2020, if we look at into how the economy has performed, then we can find that that growth we have fallen from that league of growth league of nations. Okay, we have not maintained that higher rate of growth which was actually there in the first decade of the 21st century. Though, so the trend has actually reversed after 2010 to 2020. Okay, so generally in this sphere up for the last 10 years, so whatever has happened, what we actually find is that India, we find in newspapers and political commentators have actually commented on the situation in India that India is the second fastest growing economy. Right. So I'll on with this all this background, I will start my lecture on this. Uh, and uh, and when we are talking about an economy, about Indian economy, this diagram is a must. Okay, this first diagram is a must to understand what is what is going on in the Indian economy, right? So everyone who have been attending economics or microeconomics lectures, they have come through this diagram. It is very common diagram where we find a upward moving share of the services sector and a downward moving share of the agricultural sector, and a fairly constant and stagnant share of the manufacturing sector. So this idea, this transition of the economy actually gives us the idea that we have never actually achieved a state where the industry sector becomes the dominant sector in the economy. Indian growth story has been all about the agricultural growth, agriculture sector, and the service sector. The manufacturing sector is nowhere in its history, right? So it is a very stagnant sector, and that is where all the issues uh, of regional inequality across the population, the poverty issue, lack of employment issue, uh, then the what you say, distress agricultural sector. All these issues have uh, actually come to place because the manufacturing sector in India, manufacturing as well as the industry sector in India has not performed well. Alright. So uh, in the current scenario, what when we look at into the government, and when we look at into the current slowdown in the Indian economy, we can find that the slowdown in the Indian economy has actually will actually the hamper the Indian economic system as a whole. Nobody can actually uh, go beyond that slowdown, right? Everybody has to be hit down negatively through that slowdown effect. So how they will be affected, right? What I have done is that I have summarized the impact of the slowdown on the basis of the four different subdivision. Okay, how it is affecting, how the slowdown is affecting the producer, how the slowdown is affecting the worker, how the slowdown will be affecting the banking sector, and then how the slowdown is actually affecting the government itself, right? So first we will take care of the issue of the producer. When the slowdown arrives, it is actually the slowdown of the unsold, or it is actually indicating the idea of the unsold stocks. Okay, unsold stocks means you have produced something, but that is not being sold in the market. That is the idea. And when you have unsold stocks in the in your godown, then what will happen is that your inventories will piling up. Okay, and in the meanwhile, the because you are the producer, what actually has happened, uh, you have actually produced the commodity, but you are not able to sell that commodity. That is the situation that is been happening, uh, happening during this period. So what is the idea here? Because because you have already produced it, what you have done is you have paid the wages for the labor that you hired. Okay, that is the one thing you have done as a producer. Then second thing what you have done is you have paid for all the intermediate supplied that you have used during your production system, like for a car manufacturing, if you are um, getting your intermediate input from the rubber industry, then you have paid the rubber industry earlier. Okay, so you have paid the wages to the labor, and you have paid the price of the intermediate use that is there in your production system, right? But what gets locked off because of this slowdown is that you have never realized the profit. The producer will not realize the profit. Why? Because after selling the product only it will realize the profit. That is the first idea. Then the second thing is, for a common producer, is that if it is not selling the product, then it cannot serve the debt or serve the loan that it has accrued from the bank, right? So servicing of a debt also has hampered, and this point, the servicing of a debt also will be related to the banking system. Okay, that will be impacting the banking system negatively. That is the idea. So with the slowdown, what you have is you have not realized the profit, and you have not served the loans well. Then another effect that will happen in this scenario is when the economy gets slowed down. What actually happens is that the price of the product actually gets uh, price of the products, or the price level in general has has been has become low. Okay, there will be a lower price level associated with the slowdown effect, right? So what will happen is, as the price level will be low, the profit, if at all there will be any sort of sell from the producer, then what will happen is that the profit level for the producer will be very small. Okay, and that has actually catapulted the what you what you say encouragement, or that actually disgrace used that can be used as a negative disgrace for the producer. That is the idea. Okay, then what generally happens is that uh, so the capacity of the producer will be used not will be used less than the optimal size. Okay, what does that mean? It means that when the economy was doing well, or the economy was booming, or the growth rates were bit high, then at that point of time, what was there is that the producer will be, for example, using the machine for 4 shifts per day. Okay, now because there is not much need for the goods in the market, then no demand for that goods now for the in the market. What is there? The producer will automatically reduce the use of the machine. So earlier it was, let's suppose, producing 4 shifts, using that machine for 4 shifts. Now it will be using that machine for 3 shifts or 2 shifts. That is the idea. So the capacity which has been installed with the producer, so in the producer side, that has been used, that has remained unused. Okay, and because of that, what will happen is there will be a social loss of productivity. Okay, whatever that is being lost for today, that even after day after tomorrow, or even one year after, the economy will grow, but what is lost today is lost for the whole period of time. That is the idea. So this is the impact of slowdown for a common man. We economists can discuss far better things. There are technology, everything, capital, labor ratio. But for a layman, this will ease up the understanding what is the effect on the producer. Right. Then the second issue is, uh, second part of the population, how the slowdown has effect is on the workers. How that workers, the first thing is they lose their job. Most of the unorganized worker, let's say, they lose their works, or even in some cases the organized workers, they lose their jobs. So you have actually, the world has seen the 1930s crisis, the world has seen the 2008 crisis, and the world is now viewing the corona crisis. So all these crises, what is common is that there is a loss of jobs. Okay, so this is very common for the worker. Whenever there is a slowdown in the economy, there will be loss of jobs. Okay, then uh, the the second thing that has actually happened to the Indian people basically is that there is a reduction in the consumption in absolute terms. Okay, so I am not talking about the growth reduction in the growth of the consumption expenditure, but here I am talking about reduction in the consumption in absolute terms. Okay, so uh, consumption, let's say, suppose the idea is here is, suppose earlier you were spending 6,000 rupees on your consumption per month. Now what has happened is that the consumption has declined to, let's say, 5,000 rupees per month. So there is a reduction in the absolute consumption level of about 1,000 rupees, 1,000 rupees per month. That is the idea. And when this kind of consumption reduction in the consumption expenditure happens, what does that necessarily means? The Indian consumer is purchasing less, and that is how the demand in the economy is less. Okay, another way, and this idea comes from the NSSO reports. Okay, NSSO comes up with this thick survey on consumption expenditures, and in that they have come up with these results. Then another indication that is very strong for the workers is that the FMCG goods are not moving all that fast. Okay, FMCG means the fast moving consumption goods. Your soap, then your all these products, those were being used by you in day to day life. All these FMCG, soap, shampoo, your detergent powder, detergent cakes, all this comes under the FMCG goods. So that goods are also not moving all that fast. Means what is happening in Indian situation is that the Indian consumers are not even consuming the uh, basic consumption goods. Okay, those, that is the idea. So how the slowdown has impacted the workers population. Okay, now uh, the next is the how the slowdown has been impacted in the financing system or the banking system. The idea is, first thing will be there will be bad loans. Okay, bad loans means you have if which is there in the, I have shown you in the for producer, servicing of debt will be hampered, and that means there will be bad loans in the banking and the financial system, right? So you nowadays people are in economic terms they are talking about the NPA, okay, non-performing assets and all, right? So this is an economic jargon, not for the layman people, layman who is dealing with economic issues, right? So now the next thing is there will be no recovery of loans from the banking side, and also what will be there is because the economy has a installed capacity and the demand for the products, demand is very less in the economy. What is there is the in the production system there is a unused capacity, so there is no need for further improving your capacity when you recover. Okay, so the idea here is that there will be no demand for more money also or more loans also. Okay, this is famously in economic jargon. This is called the twin balance sheet problem. So these are the common problems that will happen in case of the slowdown in the banking system. Then whether the government will be unaffected by the slowdown, is that the question? No, the government will also be affected negatively by the slowdown. The first effect will be the tax collection will go down. Okay, why the tax collection will go down? Because now, because of the slowdown, the GDP has shrinked. Okay, and because the GDP has shrinked, what will happen? As the tax base has been shrinking, the tax collection automatically will shrink. Okay, so no matter what is the tax rate, you carry on with the old tax rate that will also have a negative effect on the tax collection. Then the government spending will be adversely affected. So now what will be the government spending? One will be the revenue expenditure, second will be the capital expenditure. Revenue expenditure specifically means the salaries we government people are getting. Okay, generally that is the idea. And capital expenditure means building of road, building of infrastructure, building of electrification of villages. All these are commonly known as the capital infrastructure. And because the tax collection has actually goes down, or the income of the government has gone down, the government spending will also automatically be impacted. Okay, that is the thing. Then another basic idea which economics can actually realize is that the real burden of servicing debt increases. Okay, what actually happens is that the government finances its projects, its infrastructure projects, or road building or electrification, all these projects through what? Through deficit financing or through government debt. All right, and to service those debt, what is there is that you have to pay the interest. The government has to pay the interest, and when you have, because of the slowdown, as the price level will go down, what will happen? The real interest rate, the nominal interest rate minus the price level, now the real interest rate will be much higher. Okay, nominal interest rate, what is generally prevailing in the market, minus the price level. Okay, that will give you the real interest rate. Now what will happen, because of slowdown, as the price level has shrinked, price level has reduced, and your nominal interest rate is as it is, as contracted before with the financial institutions. What will happen? The real burden of that debt servicing will be increasing now. Okay, real burden, the interest, real interest that you will pay on the government debt, that will increase now. So in a way, when the economy actually slows down, what is actually happening is that it is affecting the whole of the economic system in total. Okay, no economic institutions or no economic agent can actually survive the scars of that economic slowdown. So to this slowdown, what was the response of the government? The first thing that comes to mind is when we look at into the crisis that has started, the slowdown, not crisis, sorry, the slowdown that has started from 2018 onwards. The government, basically what it does is it went to the denial mode. Okay? So nobody, even the principal secretary to Ministry of Finance, chief economic advisor. Oh, the chief economic advisor has actually left this country. So nobody from PMO office or Ministry of Finance or chief economic advisor or even the Niti Aayog have given any statement. Okay, and then when the pressure mounted, what actually happened is that the authorities have come up with the statement that the Indian slowdown is a global phenomenon, right? And what is the global in it? Because the global economy as a whole is shrinking or slowing down, is in recession. That's why India is no wonder. Okay, India will also be facing that slowdown. That is the statement that has been given, right? But that is a parody, and the very next day and all, the statement comes from the IMF chief Gita Gopinathan, that the slowdown in the global economy is just because the Indian economy is slowing down. Okay, so the slowdown in the Indian economy is actually pulling the world economy to the worst. That is the idea that the IMF chief was giving. Okay, so definitely what happened is India, in the negative sense, also has gained its importance, right? Then then the statement is secondly is a parody. Why? Because when we look at into the exposure ratio doesn't necessarily means that how much we are exposed to the world. Okay, how much we are exporting, how much we are importing, all these things that comes to, and what is the ratio of that to our GDP? What is it? So the idea was India's exposure ratio was very small, and that is why what will happen is that India should not worry about actually the world. Okay, India has a very large market of around 135 crore people. So India should not worry about what the global economy is behaving. India has uh, a large domestic economy. So that is again that actually again reflects how the statement from the government actually was a bit irresponsible, I may say. Okay. Then after leaving India, the chief economic advisor Arvind Subramaniam has actually after leaving India has actually told or realized that there was some fallacy in the estimation of the GDP, right? So, what actually happened in this context, I need to take a bit minutes of you that to understand this idea. So, at that point of time, for a economist or economist researcher, there was a vast literature come up, very good pieces come up in newspapers and also in some journals about the GDP data in India, which were there was a debate about 2004-5 base year and 2011 base year, right? So there was a large number of literatures available on the websites and all. So that was the debate. But I am not going into those debates. Those were basically specialized for the economics people. But what worried me and as a common people and common educated person should worry you also is that we are taking the unorganized sector that is existing in India as a residual. Okay, that is the uh, common worry. That should be the common worry. What is there is for when the GDP data, when you are estimating the GDP data, you have to take the data from organized sector as well as the unorganized sector. And the vastness of unorganized sector in India is so large that there has to be some kind of means some kind of wrong in the estimation of the GDP data. All right, so that has to be there because it is very difficult to collect the unorganized data. Okay, the methodology to estimate that data has to be foolproof, or you cannot have a foolproof methodology for the data collecting from the unorganized sector, right? So there has to be uh, some kind of mistakes in the estimation of GDP data. But the worry is Indian in India, when we estimate the GDP data, we are actually treating the unorganized sector as the residual. The name is unorganized, that is okay, fine. Organized, that means unorganized. In English language, it is fine. But for India, what is there? In India, 90 to 90% of the labor force engaged are actually coming under the unorganized sector. More than 50% of the GDP is coming from the unorganized sector. So how can this unorganized sector become a residual? Whatever not there in the organized is unorganized. It cannot be. Okay, it should be other way around. Whatever not there in the unorganized should be organized. That is the idea. So we have not developed the not treated well the unorganized sector. That is the thing. Okay, so in the debate of GDP data, there has to be mistake, and that the debate of GDP data has come up from the government. Then then after that, the government response was this slowdown is a cyclical phenomenon. There has to be ups and downs. But what eventually, when why there is ups and downs, is when eventually the economy goes down, automatically the government will intervene and took some steps so that it can recover, or the government will intervene so that it can mitigate the effect of the slowdown on the economy as a whole. So that was not coming from the government during that period of time, and even now also. So I will come to that later. Then after this response fails, again the response comes from the government that there is a need for basic reforms, right? How many times you will do the basic reforms? You have come up with the 1991 reforms, you have come up with all every time GST reforms, you have come up with labor reforms, all these reforms. But these reforms are will actually give you result when there is a proper evaluation of the effects of the effect of the reforms. That effect, that evaluation is actually not happening. Uh, I don't know it is happening or not. That is known to the official persons in the Ministry of Finance like Vikas Bhai and Deepak Das. But we as a common people, we don't know whether that evaluation is happening or not because it is not published anywhere, right? So that thing that they can correct me if I am wrong. Okay, so now what is the role of theory in this slowdown? Okay, in this slowdown, what is there is there are four things I will discuss here. There are three. One is the jargon that economics is a dismal science. That is actually given by Malthus in his time in the 18th, 19th century or 18th century, right? So during that time, he has given that economics is a dismal science, right? Where he was talking about the geometrical progression of the population, whereas the GDP will grow, GDP or resources will grow uh, in an arithmetic progression, and automatically at some point of time there will be stagnation in the economy. Okay, so but during this slowdown period, we should not confuse the Malthusian idea of economics or Malthusian economics as we should not confuse between the idea of underproduction and overpopulation. Okay, that is the idea. So in the slowdown, what exactly happening is we are underproducing. Okay, overpopulation is never a reason, and the idea of economics being a dismal science has been proved wrong in due course of time. Okay, then the second idea, economic theory, that has actually comes here is that economics has been treated as the queen of social science, and this was done by mathematical economist Paul Samuelson, who eventually is a uh, very powerful textbook writer. And you may find the books here I am showing. This is the book he has written, right? So in this book, what is there is that this book completely changed the way around the world, actually, the way economics has been taught to a undergraduate student, right? So what exactly happens is that in the Paul Samuelson's idea, he has reduced economics to the problem of constraint optimization based on the principle of scarcity. And when we are talking about scarcity, what exactly we are talking about is we are denying the fact that we cannot grow. Okay, we are denying the fact that we can grow. All right. So if scarcity is the principle on the basis of which any economic theory is based, then there should not be underemployment. unemployment, because if there is scarcity, then there has to be full employment. There has to be full capacity utilization. There will not be underutilized capacity, and also there has to be no scarcity of prime factors of production. All right. So to overthrow or to discredit the idea, or the idea prevailed by promoted by Paul Samuelson, we can take the example of the Japanese growth. Okay, they are a very tiny country. They have scarcity in land. They have less population, and more or less they have the aged population, less of labor supply, and still they are they are the third largest economy in the world now. Okay, that is the idea. So scarcity as a basic principle of economics is completely demolished here. Then the third idea was the common sense made difficult. It was more or less propagated by most of the academicians, not generally from economics, but it was propagated. And one of the proponent was Alfred Marshall, where he tried to explain in this concept in this occasion. He tries to explain economics as a study of ordinary business of life, and everything that is going on in the economy and in the human life can be explained through the demand and supply. All right, demand and supply, and you will achieve the equilibrium, and automatically the market will fix up everything. All right. Then now, what exactly happens with all these economic theoretical background? What exactly happens is when the laissez-faire economy has failed, and very recently when it fails in the 2008-9 crisis, global crisis, the UN Commission report, that is also known as the Stiglitz Commission report. In that Commission report, Stiglitz has actually come up or attributed the global crisis to the wrong policies and eventually to the wrong theory, because our economic theory, our economics education was wrong. That is why the global crisis has happened. So, what is wrong with our economic understanding of our Indian economy? What exactly is the wrong thing we are doing is we are actually treating the Indian economy as a linear function between factors of production and output. Okay, so you have what? You have the Cobb-Douglas production function. For economics graduates, they must have known. Cobb-Douglas production function, you have log linearize all this way, and in the left hand side you have log of output, in the right hand side you will have alpha log of capital and alpha log of and beta log of labor. That is the common idea. So the production system that is there, the aggregate production system that is there, is actually a linear function. That is how we treat. But actually what is there is that the Indian economy, not only the Indian economy, every economy are a complex interconnected system. Okay, so to explain what we mean by interconnected system, let's suppose in 2018 when we look at into the slowdown, what was there is that the automobile sector was not doing well. Okay, if you remember that thing, right? So what is the effect of the slowdown in the automobile industry? The backward linkage effect will be the tire producer, the electrical device producer, the plastic producer, uh, the steel producer, all these producers are actually the suppliers of the inputs to the car or automobile sector, right? So if the car sector or automobile sector is not doing good, then automatically these four or five sectors which provide the inputs to the car sectors will be impacted, right? They will be impacted negatively. This is the negative, this is the backward linkage, what we economists tell. Then if if we go further, then what is there? If the cars or automobile sector is not doing well, then what will be there? The obviously that will impact the car in automobile insurance sector. Obviously it will impact the servicing of car sector, car servicing sector, uh, like and other sectors which uses the car or automobiles in their production functions, right? So the idea is, if one sector, one specific sector is impacted, then that will percolate into other sectors sooner or later. That is the idea. Okay, so that is the complexity of the production process, which actually is not understood by the not taken care of by the policy makers, right? Then what are the policies to address the slowdown? We have a well crafted policy, and that has been proven several times by and that is given by J.M. Keynes, John Maynard Keynes. Like, and he suggested in the time of recession or in the time of slowdown, what will happen if you carry on the public capital expenditure, then you will get the return back. The capital expenditure will return back to you or the government with a multiplier principle. The what we generally call it as the investment multiplier. Okay, so that is the idea. Then we should have a backstop relief program that has to be activated. Some backstop relief program, that which I means is that kind of MGNREGA program, NREGA program. That is the backstop. But in this occasion, I would like to say that even if this MGNREGA and MGNREGA program is given very much importance by professors like Jean Dries and all, I would say that MGNREGA cannot be the life mantra of the common Indian man. Okay, it is a program when you are not getting any employment, that it will support you. But it is a program that will continue for lot of life. That is not actually accepted by me. All right, then there has to be increase in the capital expenditure, and increase in the capital expenditure actually serves two things. One is the capital expenditure means some infrastructure projects, they will come up or something, then it will increase, it will create employment, and that will bring the purchasing power in the hand of the people. And then second thing is the supply side bottlenecks by the provision of those infrastructural projects. The supply side bottlenecks which the Indian economy is facing, that will be solved. So the capital expenditure by the government has a two-way effect. Then there were an incentive for the with the government, that it can tinker with the tax system, that can address to the problem of the specific sector also for a temporary period of time. Let's say if the car sector or automobile sector is negatively impacted, then tinker with the tax rate of the automobile sector only. But now with GST, what is happening is nothing is there with the hand of the Ministry of Finance. It is with the hand of the GST Council. If the GST Council approves, then only it can tinker with, otherwise not. Okay, that kind of policy institution now is not with the government. Then then government has to make it convenient to understand the problem of crisis. And this is a very specific point which I make to I would like to make, and which is also, if someone has gone through the budget, then budget of the last year, then you can have looked upon it, that in that whole budget, um, Mrs. Finance Minister has not spoken about the crisis. Even the two-page, she has not spoken about the what the government understand what about the crisis, what the government thinks about the crisis. She has not spoken about that. That I guess is very harsh from the finance ministry, right? So that is one. Then in the recent time, what happens is that we have come up with two devastating programs, that is the demonetization and the GST. The objective of the demonetization uh, was like to capture the culprit of the black money, but we have failed to attend that objective. Why? Because actually during that point of demonetization in 2016 and in 17 also, you come up with, you have some ideas, like some newspapers were also reported, like uh, the bank account which were opened in the Jan Dhan Yojana during with the Jan Dhan Yojana scheme after 2014, which were laid down idle till that date, has tremendously increased their saving with that account. Okay, that was the idea. From where they have got the money, and Jan Dhan Yojana is not for the common people, not common salaried people. That is for the basically for the poor people, right? Labor class people, the people with non farming people who were actually the job card holders of from the MGNREGA, they have the Jan Dhan Yojana account. All these things are there. So basically, at that point of time, that has happened. Then during that time, I also have heard stories from students from Utkal University that some politicians will give the students some money, and they will go to the bank and put it there it in their account, student account, and then they will get some share from that money, and and they will give the rest of the amount, which automatically after depositing in the account has become what has become white in nature, right? So those were the stories we have come across during the demonetization period. So the idea is, demonetization was a failed surgical strike. So why I say failed surgical strike, and still now also the supporters of demonetization, they actually term the jargon surgical strike for the surgical strike on corruption. Okay, but why it is a failed surgical strike, in the sense that when the government has done it, it should have readied itself with the trucks of notes, readily available new notes or new currency notes at the doorstep of the banks. That was not there. And eventually, what had happened is that after the demonetization happens, the RBI come up with a even higher demonetization note to solve the problem of currency crunch, right? 2,000 rupees. Why we make the demonetization? To get the 500 rupees note and 1000 rupees notes out of the economy, and we are coming up with a even higher demonetization of currency. That is not understood for me. That is the idea. So that is why. So India, the authority have planned the demonetization, but they have not planned the proper retreat from that demonetization. Okay, that is the thing we lacked at that point of time. Then, in case of GST, what is there? It has blown the economy into or its second shock at that point of time. So, what has happened is it should have demonetization has to be there in a one in one single go you have to do, but GST has to be can actually be adopted in a calibrated phased wise approach. In 1 year this person, the large producer; in second year the tiny producer; third year the on unorganized producer. They can be done. So that what will happen, the culture of filing GST uh, could have been more appropriated within the population. That is the thing, that those are some mistakes we have done, and we have to learn that. Then what is the constraint before the governments? This is the, I guess, the last slide. I'll finish after this. Then the constant before the government in this situation is that we have to maintain the fiscal fundamentalism. And fiscal fundamentalism, when we are talking about, suddenly we come across the act, that is the FRBM Act, where it is actually decided that the revenue deficit has to be zero, and the fiscal deficit is to be reduced to the 3% of the GDP at within a stipulated period of time, right? So to maintain that fiscal fundamentalism now in the corona period also, the government cannot actually go for a higher uh, amount of capital expenditure. Okay? That is the idea. So that is the constant that Indian government have. And then uh, I guess before the election or something, before the election or just after the election, the Indian government has slashed the corporate taxes, and which was even come even for the corporate world of the country, has come as a positive shock. Okay, they cannot actually digest that slashing of the corporate rates to 15% from I guess 30% to 15% or something. You may correct it. So that is unwarranted for specifically, right? At that point of time. Then the second thing we have to do, or in the government has, is the constraint is there has been no reforms in agriculture and the public sector undertakings factors. After the 1990s, it was the reform in the 30 years, which actually is directed towards the financial sector. Narasimham 1 committee, Narasimham 2 committee, all this committee that is specifically towards the financial sectors. Then the private sector of the economy, the reforms was directed towards, but not towards the agricultural sector and the public sector undertakings. And few days before we were discussing and debating in the WhatsApp group about the selling of the PSUs, and that is the idea. So when we are not doing anything for the PSUs, any reforms for those PSUs, then how can we actually think of they are giving you the benefit, right? Then the third one is that when we look at into the 5-year plans of 5-year plan history or planning history of India after the independence, then we can find that up to the third 5-year plan, which was which was about the Nehru. Second plan was Nehru Mahalanobis model, and after that, one was the four sector model by the Nehru Mahalanobis model. In after that, there were no development strategy. Yes, we know that the Nehru Mahalanobis model has failed miserably, but what is the replacement of that model? What is the development strategy that has replaced the Nehru Mahalanobis model? We don't have an answer. The answer is we have gone to the vulgarization of the subsidies. Okay, there are with the poverty alleviation programs that has taken place after with Indira Gandhi time, okay, Mrs. Indira Gandhi time, that is called the vulgarization of subsidies. Okay, alleviate the poverty with subsidy, not eradicate poverty or remove poverty with productive employment. Okay, so there is a very vast difference in the strategy. The Nehru Mahalanobis model, which was there, that has actually tremendously directed towards removing poverty through productive employment, through provision of employment, and that they have done it through the industrialization. But what Indira Gandhi period and after that, after the Indira Gandhi period has done, is that they have done or removed the they have tried to remove the poverty with uh, bringing down the bringing of different subsidy programs, right? All the subsidy programs you can think of, and no state governments are also far behind in this culture. The Odisha government, and in South India, you can think of all these vulgar subsidization program that are those are prevalent. You in Odisha also that is prevalent. So 1 rupees rice, 2 rupees rice, all these vulgar subsidies that has happened, and because of that, what is there is that the pressure on the government is because of these subsidies, not because of the investment, productive investment it is making. Okay, so there is a diversion of funds from productive investment to subsidies. That was the thing. So that has become the non-strategy has become the fundamental strategy of Indian planning and the Indian government after the 80s, after Indira Gandhi, right? So what we should actually do to minimize to get over all these effects. The first one is to reinvent the original strategy of industrialization, and in this case, we need some political boldness. And I guess if Narendra Modi ji can do bold steps like demonetization, then he should be able to do this kind of this this small thing of he can show this political boldness of reinventing the industrialization. Stop one to subsidization program and diverse those funds towards capital investment. That is the thing that needs certain boldness. And second thing is decentralize the development process to the local government, and with the GST in track now, this process of decentralization of local government is very much possible for the Indian economy. So overall, what I want to conclude is that we have a powerful government with 353 members and 303 members from one party. And we have a very uh, lackluster type of opposition which do not have a leader at all. So in these conditions, the political boldness of the current government should actually come forward. They should come forward and go for some kind of reforms which actually take the ground which actually should design the economy from the ground, because we are on the ground now. So we should design it again, we should start up again. Okay, so that is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyadarshi. For me, it was a very interesting and very thought-provoking lecture. I think most of our participants must have enjoyed this lecture, but to be honest, it was not simple actually. It was not for a layman because you actually talked 360 degree of the analysis you made, and you actually gave a very better perspective that economic students or economics can actually understand the way you wanted to convey. So, but it was very beautiful analysis. So for me, if you ask me that I could just take 1 to 2 minutes to have my comments. Then I would allow, I would request Pradeep Tarathi to discuss what you have already said. So for me, from the economic theory point of view, as you mentioned, see most of the theories we know in economics they are based on the assumptions, and the art of simplifying the assumptions depends on how the outcome of the theory is about. So, I'm just referring to Solo in his contributory paper in Oxford Journal during 1956, if I'm not wrong, actually said this thing. So when you talk about the theories, so the theory, the simplifying assumptions of the theories are important for the sensitivity of the results that a theory gives. And if you actually say that the theory like the Harrod-Domar growth model, or you talked about Cobb-Douglas production function, so they have some faulty assumptions also, like the fixed ratio assumption, even the unity that Cobb-Douglas production function, that the substitution
Elasticity of
substitution
substitution.
is unity. So for me, like when we used in our first plan the Harrod-Domar growth model, it led to prolonged inflation as well as the prolonged unemployment situation because of this faulty assumption. So and secondly, let me say that the point you mentioned regarding India's growth story is about agriculture, but I bit differ. If you talk about after 1990, so the sustained growth has been the outcome from the industrial growth. The sustained, overall economic growth is outcome of industrial growth, and even within the industrial growth, the contribution of the organized manufacturing growth has been very substantial. And for me also, the productivity plays a very important role in different sectors. So in terms of growth, when you speak about the productivity, we found that productivity of industry or even the specifically organized manufacturing are far more than the productivity found in construction, mining, agriculture, etc. So the from the employment perspective, if you move from agriculture to industry to service, India has not found this generalized way of shifting its people from this to service sector via industrialization. That could be a criticism, that industry has not played an important role in terms of providing employment. But from growth point of view, industry after economic reforms has actually played a very vital role. And the third point I would like to say, you talked about, matlab, I'll not be political what you have said, rather I will go to the details of the, economics understanding that we talk about and we try to understand. So when you talked about that global growth is falling because of India's contribution, it's true. But if you see the argument that we make that India's also equally affected by global growth, it's also not wrong, because when you see the export import and other technological flow and most of the contributions that we get in terms of our even oil import, in terms of technology, so we are dependent on global, we cannot deny that, right? So that's one aspect I would like to highlight. I'm not commenting, but I'm giving my point of view, what you have said. And I think another point you mentioned regarding okay, regarding the policies that reforms. So if you understand in Atmanirbhar Bharat, so there are flow of so many reforms. So you say the
And one more point is uh, that this recently the last quarter that GDP negative by negative 23, that how quickly we are going to recover, or we will see some positive kind of thing. I mean, what would be expectation? And so this is the 2 point, just my from my side, if you can.
So I'll take Prafulla's thing first. Regarding agriculture bill, I guess I am not the correct person to answer about agriculture bill. But if I am not wrong, if the farmers are actually uh, doing some protest uh, against this agricultural bill, then there is something in that bill. Actually, I have not read.
I could ask, yeah, that's if you allow me, I could
Yeah,
just
yeah, because I can be the better
see
response.
the most important factor these farmers are protesting is because they fear that the MSP price will be gone, but which has been cleared by Prime Minister that MSP, that price that was guaranteed for the procurement, is not going to be, is not going to happen. That's the point number one. That confusion is there. That's why they are thinking that if MSP gone, the big farmers like they are in the Haryana, Punjab, and other parts of our country will be affected. Point number one. Point number two is that there because three bills, if you can Prafulji, if you can know, there are three farmer bills that has been laid and that has been passed. One is Essential Commodity Act, another is APMC Act, and third one I'm just forgetting. I think yes. So second, in APMC, they are saying that outside Mandi there will be tax-free, system of selling the agricultural commodities. That's why there is a fear that it some the argument from the positive side argument that it will give more scope to the farmers that we can sell their farm produce. At the same time, the APMC kind of thing which had been established historically, and the fear is that that system will come and it may hamper negatively to the farmers. There are two major aspects that has been discussed and that has been opposed. If I'm not wrong, Prafulji.
But that MSP, what you said, that Prime Minister has cleared that issue, but it's not mentioned in the bill actually. That's why there is some confusion, and farmers are protesting with respect to MSP, I think.
Yes, yes, there is a confusion, but there, once that has been cleared by Prime Minister, there should not be any confusion. So he has categorically said that this is not going to happen. So further, I think I am not able to comment.
No, the point is, if it is not written in the bill, then why to drag that into the bill? That is
See,
the idea,
that's true.
right?
That's true.
So,
That's true.
so it's election time and Bihar time, so this will happen.
Protesting, like protesting, protest is a right of farmers. So if they have some confusion, it has to be cleared as per my understanding.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, but it should be the discussion should be with information, correct information and facts.
Right, right.
Thanks.
And about 23% growth rate of the quarter. If because I can actually correct me if I am wrong, when they come up with the quarterly estimates of this growth rate, they come up with for the organized sector only, not the unorganized sector. I guess, is that correct?
Yes, I think you are correct. But this is a quarter growth, my negative 23.
Yes, yes.
But this
Yes.
should not be very much
Yeah,
because
this has to be there. This was well predicted in one of the paper from IAG, our own Dr. Prabhakar Sahu. He has categorically estimated these figures around his figures around this about the growth rate. So we don't have to worry about this thing. Everything was shut down during the last 4 months. Okay. Nothing
Yeah.
was being produced, no workers, nothing was happening. So it has to be like that. Okay, only the agricultural sector, because of the performance of the agricultural sector, we have survived this SARS, and this is 23.9. If agriculture would have been bad, then we would have got a much worse figure. So we don't have to worry about this.
Okay.
So, we have to worry about about this number if the government after this also will not take any proactive steps. That should be our worry. The number should not be an worry. Okay.
Good, good.
Am I right? Yeah. Then one question came up from about demonetization. Demonetization, a failed surgical strike. How? That even in some RBI reports, it has been written. It has been like mentioned that whatever the money was in circulation about those 1,000 rupees and 500 rupees, that has come to the RBI, and the idea was to capture the corrupt money or the black money in the economy, right? We have not done it because whatever was circulated, that has gone back to the RBI, and it has been issued with new notes. So that perspective is lost, right? That's why you use the word surgical. This is actually, I am not using that word surgical strike, but it was commonly used word at that period of time among the supporter of the government, and I was also one of them at that point time when big people used to actually use this jargon of surgical strike in their Facebook post, right? Demonetization, a surgical strike on corruption, all these things. Even some ministers have also spoken about this. They have used this word surgical strike. So this is a word which is not specifically pronounced by me. It's very, very actually a lot of people have done it. Is there any word in economy? This is not there. So that's what the politicalization of a economic event that has happened, right? Then present crisis we are facing now. Okay. So I should not exactly comment on this. Where should we go then and find solution when the temple is closed since? Alright, I don't comment on this. Uh, as a layman, what we can do to revive economy? That is one question. The first thing one can do from an individual perspective, you as an individual cannot actually revive an economy. Okay, it is reviving an economy is a macroeconomic perspective, and an individual plays a very insignificant role in that. But what we actually can do is we can maintain at least the consumption expenditure what we have, right? I know I have reduced my consumption expenditure during the last 4 to 5 months. That is the idea. So maintaining the consumption expenditure itself is a individual consumption expenditure itself is a big worry. But that is where I should do the classification that this revival of economy is a macro economic phenomena, and we as an individual cannot do anything. Okay, but as the economy will grow, the producer will hire labor, and then people will get engaged, and they will start. Most of the unemployed people will start to spend. That will revive the aggregate demand. Okay, that is a macroeconomic phenomena. As an individual, we cannot do because as an individual, I don't know what has happened during the corona, right? Because I am getting my salary on the first of the month. That is the idea. So that thing we need to do. Okay. So then a significant number among the weaker sections of our society may slip back into poverty by this crisis. Yeah, this is absolutely correct, and reports and statements have already come from various authorities and also economists that India is going to have 112 crore of added unemployment after the corona crisis. So obviously this is going to give a very glim picture about the Indian economy in the times to come. So how can we solve it? A positive and bold policy intervention is needed. The fiscal policy has to be activated. Then by activating fiscal policies, the purchasing power within the people has to be generated. That is the idea. So basically speaking, in macroeconomics, we have to revive the aggregate demand in the economy. You do what you want to do. So the government is there. Then from Malthusian theory, I have not read this farmer bill up to now well. So relating it to Malthusian theory will be a bit difficult at the point of time. But in due time, I'll paste my comment in the WhatsApp group so you can capture that. Fine. Is that fine? That's it. I guess these are the questions. If I am okay, these are the questions I get in the chat box. Any question? Any other question?
Yes. If anybody have any other questions, please ask. Otherwise, we'll go for the concluding remarks. I think Priyadarshi, most of questions have been adjusted and discussed. So, I am very happy that this kind of discussion happened. And you actually, in the beginning, I also said you actually discussed 360 degree of the economics. Even it was the heading was the layman. But I found sometimes that To understand any concept simply, you need to read 360 degree actually. Otherwise, things cannot be simplified the way you simplify it. So it shows that you have read and understood the concept so nicely, and that's why you are able to speak the difficult topics very simply. So congratulations for that, and I thank from behalf of all the participants for the vote of thanks. That responsibility is given to Joydev. So Joydev, if you are here, please conclude the session with vote of thanks, please.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Joshi. Right, with his lecture, he able to ignite something within a hardcore political science student. Right, and that's the reason why I was able to link politics with economy and try to pose some questions. But smartly, he was able to skip those two questions. And thank you for that. And I also like to thank you for enlightening lectures, and also like to thank the chair for giving your time out of your busy schedule, and also like to thank you, Vishwajit Panibhai, for helping us to live stream this particular session in YouTube, and also like to thank you all the participants. Pradip Rathibhai, I think he's the one who whenever you goes to him, he never say no, right? So I think no is not there in his dictionary. So I think
Pradip Rathibhai bhai should be given a chance like me to give a talk on the financial system.
I think he was the first one who started this webinar series.
Yeah. Then I have missed it then. Okay.
So he is the inauguration lecture was given by Pradip.
Yeah, when I was preparing for this lecture, then I have in my mind Pradip Rathibhai because he is a finance guy, and I am a bit kind of handicap in finance. That's it. That's the idea. So
actually, there is a demand for mutual fund and all other. We'll do one session. Actually, in November we'll do. This October is very hectic for completing this trimester. November definitely we'll do. Yeah.
Okay. So with this, I would like to thank you, and also like to thank you, the motivator and the guide, Mr. DK Bhai. I think he's not here. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Dr. Joshi, Dr. Ponda, and Vikas Bhai.
Thank you everyone. And whenever you go to